I wanted to start my comments with two quotes that our friend Nick just said that reminded me of. And the first is from Pan-African revolutionary Thomas Sankara, who said that the struggle to defend the trees and the forest is above all a struggle against imperialism. Imperialism is the arsonist setting fire to our forests and our savannas. Yeah. And the other, given that I've just returned from Cuba, is a quote from Che Guevara, who says that anyone who trembles with indignation at injustice is a comrade of mine. Yeah. And I am very, very pleased and proud to be stood next to dozens, hundreds of people on our picket week after week who tremble with indignation at the injustices happening around the world, and to be surrounded by comrades such as you. So thank you very much. So I have just returned from a National Education Union delegation to Cuba. I was one of 20 educators from England and Wales who brought dozens of suitcases full of material aid to break the blockade to Cuba, and we visited over 10 different schools across Havana and Pinar del Rio, bringing crayons, pencils, rulers, calculators, colouring pens, chalk for the playground, sports equipment, ballet shoes, leotards, musical instruments and strings, computers, braille machines, all the things that it's very difficult for Cuba to be able to import as a result of the 6-decade-long blockade that's been enforced upon it by the United States of America as a settler colony and imperialist state and its neighbour. It was a profoundly moving and life-changing experience, I have to say. We went to primary and secondary schools. We went to music, dance and art specialist schools. We went to schools for children with visual impairments and blind children. We went to schools and cultural centres for children and young adults with Down syndrome. And across every single school that we went to, every educator, teacher, trade unionist and young person that we spoke to, what Cuba says their education system is about is a pedagogy of tenderness and love. And those are not words, that is a practice. And despite the fact that Cuba is suffering from a deprivation of resources, material resources, as a result of the blockade, I am envious of the education system and the educators that they have in Cuba. The fact that love, tenderness, care, creativity, humanism, collectivism is at the centre and the core of what education means in Cuba makes me ashamed of the education system here that puts competition and profit at the heart of what it means to be a good human being and an educator in this world. So whilst we thought it was very important for us to break the physical blockade, we also recognise that what we have to learn from Cuba is to break the mental blockade that we have here in this country, that pits people against each other and puts capitalism and profit and competition above solidarity, which is an integral part of the Cuban education system and society that we saw. Whilst we were in Cuba, there was a vote at the United Nations General Assembly against the blockade. The Cubans brought a resolution. And what was beautiful to see, we were in Pinar del Rio, and they had a huge screen in the centre of the town. And there were school kids who'd got the day off school to come and watch the United Nations deliberations and hear the speeches from representatives from all over the world. And for the 33rd consecutive year, the overwhelming global majority from every single continent around the world supported Cuba's resolution to end the blockade of Cuba. 165 countries and only 7 countries opposing. I think we can probably guess who those 7 countries are, but they include, of course, the imperialist United States of America and their settler colonial outpost Israel. Shame on them. What really inspired us as well about the education system is the mass literacy crusade that is a part of Cuban educational history and is adorned across the walls of the playgrounds, the murals, the classrooms, and it recognises the revolutionary leaders, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Jose Marti, and that in the 1960s, one of the first things that the revolutionary government did was to launch a literacy crusade where they brought 100,000 volunteers from urban areas to the most remote parts of the country, and they brought literacy rates or illiteracy rates from 42% down to 4% in under a year. And now Cuba has one of the most educated populations in the world with a literacy rate of 99.8%. What else do we have to learn from Cuba? Cuba spends more of its GDP on education than any country in the world. 17% of Cuban GDP goes to education compared to 6% here in the UK. What would it look like if we actually invested in our young people rather than in bullets, bombs, F-35 fighter jets and nuclear weapons? What if we gave them the opportunities to also experience art, music, dance, creativity, poetry, as well as all the educational opportunities that Cuba, despite its lack of resources, is providing for its young people? School meals, free. Uniforms, free. Morning and after school care, free. University education, free. It's possible. Why don't we have it here in the 5th richest country in the world? Healthcare, free. Cuba has the highest ratio of doctors to patients in the world. 1 doctor for every 106 people. In the UK, that is 1 for every 337. Cuba, despite the blockade, became the first country to eliminate mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. It has produced vaccines for cholera, for malaria, for meningitis, for hepatitis, for COVID. It's developing a liver cancer vaccine. Again, if Cuba can do it, and they've shown us that it's possible, why is it not possible here? It is. We have that creativity. We have the resources to do it amongst us as people. It's our governments, it's the corporations that are hoarding and preventing us from using the resources to actually improve the livelihoods of all of our people. I want to also speak about women in Cuba. And the main reason, and I've shared this with my union colleagues at school, with our students, and it also to highlight the integral role that global women of colour and the global women's strike have played in holding down the picket for 106 weeks here. Fidel Castro said that the fight for women's rights was the revolution within the revolution. And the Cuban constitution explicitly guarantees women economic, political, social, cultural and family rights. We had a meeting with the Federación de Mujeres Cubanas, which was established on the first year of the revolution. It has now more than 4 million members, 70% of the female population of Cuba. It is the largest mass organization in Cuba, the biggest women's organization in Latin America. 56% of Cuba's parliament are women, the second highest percentage in the world. Women make up the majority of judges, attorneys, lawyers, scientists, technical workers, public health workers, professionals. We met the trade union leaders of the education union, 5 Afro-Cuban women. We went to, out of the 10 schools that we went to, 7 of them, the head teachers, were Afro-Cuban women. One of the head teachers was a 25-year-old Afro-Cuban woman. Absolutely incredible, who had just graduated from the University of Pinar del Rio in Marxist-Leninist pedagogy. I wouldn't mind a head teacher like that. Let me see. And what have they gained as the revolution? Women receive 18 weeks of full salary during maternity leave, followed by 40 weeks at 60%. Maternity law, single mothers receive the exact same benefits and rights. Workplaces include casas infantiles, so mothers can continue developing their own profession, and that is for free. Mothers who look after children with disabilities receive a complete salary as a legal requirement. In the schools, in the early years, boys are taught to do housework from the earliest age. The 1975 Family Code, this is 1975, states that women and men must share household and family responsibilities equally. The government subsidizes abortion and family planning. It places a really high value on prenatal care. It offers maternity housing to women before giving birth. So, despite the blockade on Cuba, despite the intense free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Despite the blockade on Cuba, despite all the efforts of the Trump administration, and the Biden administration, the Obama administration, and all the administrations before it to strangle and suffocate the Cuban economy, to turn the Cuban people against the revolutionary project. We experienced many blackouts while we were there. Internet was down. Things are tough. I don't want to gloss over and romanticize the struggles and the challenges that the Cuban people are facing. It's a really difficult time in Cuba at the moment. They're referring to it as the second special period. The first being after the falling of the Soviet Union and the loss of that diplomatic and financial support. COVID has had a devastating impact on the island. Hurricane Melissa as well has destroyed and devastated large parts of the eastern part of the island. But despite those challenges, the resilience, the perseverance and the belief that a better world is possible, not just that a better world is possible, that a better world is here and that we're fighting for it and that we must protect it, is very strong amongst the Cuban people. And it's something that has moved me, profoundly inspired me to bring that struggle back here to the UK, to help to break the blockade in Cuba in solidarity, but like I said, to also try and build that society here. And Cuba shows us that even when we have limited resources, solidarity and internationalism is not a luxury, it is an imperative. Yes. Cuba's internationalism, again, for me, is the envy of the world. We just commemorated or celebrated the 50-year anniversary of Operation Carlota. Operation Carlota, where the Cubans sent brigades to fight against the apartheid South African government in Angola. So this is again a long-standing history in Cuba, and that's why when an earthquake hits Haiti or Nepal, when Ebola breaks out in West Africa or in Italy, the first people to touch ground at the airport is a brigade of Cuban doctors. What would it be like if we exported doctors and educators around the world instead of weapons? If Cuba can do it again and shows us that it's possible, why can't we? So we need to rededicate ourselves to the anti-imperialist movement globally, to international solidarity with Cuba and the Cuban people who are struggling against the blockade, but still show us what solidarity means. Not sharing what we have left over, but sharing what we have. In health, in education, and building a better society for everyone. I want to finish with the banner that was up when we met the Cuban Students' Union, which represents 80,000 university students. Nadie será libre hasta que lo sea Palestina. No one is free until Palestine is free. Free, free!